Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dice, Decks, and Design episode number 1, where today we're going to be starting our weekly podcast about game design, where I will be talking about everything that I find interesting about games, everything that you find interesting about games, and overall, just the best parts about making games. Now, as you can see in front of me, or behind me, right here, we have the Great Designer Search number 3 multiple choice question. And I figured this would be a great way to start off the show so we can start talking about game design by looking at one of the most successful games of all time, Magic the Gathering. Now, if you don't know what Magic the Gathering is, it's a trading card game that was developed by Wizards of the Coast. It's been in production for about 25 years. They just celebrated their 25th anniversary. In fact, just very recently. It was a few months ago they released their 25th anniversary products. And so they, in collaboration with that, or in conjunction with that, they have a Great Designer Search where they put out different questions and things for people to be able to join with Wizards of the Coast to attempt to become one of the designers for them. Now, unfortunately, you had to be 18 to do this, and I am 17, so wasn't able to do that. But I have not looked at this yet, so we're going to go through the multiple choice this time. Just me talking about the design, talking about the way cards are put together, all these questions. We're going to go ahead and do that, and then next week we will go back through everything I get wrong, try to figure out why, and discuss the actual design of it. So, we're going to go ahead and start it off. What is the most appropriate color for this card? Question 1. Scrappy Survivor. Converted mana costs 6. It's a creature that's 5/5 with Menace and Prowess. Now, Menace and Prowess are both very red abilities. Now, Magic the Gathering has this awesome thing called the Color Pie. And the Color Pie is a way for them to divide different mechanics up against different areas. And so, both of these mechanics are very red. They both focus on being antagonistic and specifically targeted and powerful in the same way that all red cards are. What is the most appropriate rarity for this card? So now, the way they separate things is into booster packs. And each booster pack has different cards at different rarities, ranging from common all the way up to mythic rare. Now, the common cards are meant to be just run-of-the-mill. You'll probably see a few of these every few packs you open. All the way up to mythic rare, which is you may open up an entire box and only find one of these Scrappy Survivors. And now, I believe this should be an uncommon card. It has 2 keywords on it. And normally keywords are usually kind of an indicator of how powerful a thing will be. This has Menace and Prowess, things that both make it really good in combat. So to be able to make that balanced in a draft environment, you don't want everybody to have 3 of them in their deck. But also, it doesn't do anything incredibly powerful, so I don't believe it should be rare. So I think uncommon is the best place to put this. Pardon me. You're changing one of Scrappy Survivor's keywords to another. Which of the following combinations would result in a card that couldn't be monocolored? So we're looking for things that could not be put in red. So, Menace and Vigilance. Menace, red keyword. Vigilance, white keyword. I think that you could put those together fine enough. Hexproof and Prowess. Hexproof, blue and green. Prowess, definitely red. I think I'm leaning towards this one. First Strike absolutely can be a red power, or a red keyword. Prowess, absolutely red keyword. Lifelink and Menace, you could definitely put both of those in white, and it would not be a problem. Menace and Vigilance, I think you could put both of those in as white as well. However, Hexproof and Prowess could not be the same thing. They both interact very differently. Hexproof, by stopping opponents from being able to interact with something and then making it get bigger as you work with it, has to have some form of a sacrifice with it. And that, in this case, I think would be having it have to be multiple colors. What is the most appropriate color combination for this card? A 4-mana sorcery that says gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gets +1/+1 and gains haste, hexproof, and trample until end of turn. I'm going to say red-green without even looking at the options because there's the card Hijack, which just steals the thing, gives it haste, untaps it, lets it attack this turn. I believe that was printed in Kaladesh or Aether Revolt, one of the two. So it already exists in that form. But buffing it, giving it hexproof, and trample are all very green abilities. And look at that, it's the first option. What is the most appropriate rarity for this card? Come work for me temporarily. 4 mana. Oh, the same card. Most appropriate rarity. Let's see. What was... Okay, if we're looking at this and we're designing a draft, because that's what Wizards puts a lot of their effort around, and I think it's the best way to look at Magic cards just in a vacuum. In a draft, if I'm spending 4 mana, I want a pretty powerful effect. Less powerful so than if we were playing in Standard or Modern, but definitely a powerful effect. And gaining control of a creature, untapping it, giving it haste, is already a very powerful effect. So the fact that now we buff it, make it untargetable, and let it trample in, and it's just any creature. So if you play an incredibly powerful, like 9/9 demon, and I want to just take it, I can just do that with this card. So I'm going to put this... I think I would balance this at a rare slot. I think that it has power. You're not going to see it every time you play, but it doesn't do anything broken enough to constitute being mythic rare. If we weren't planning to change the color combination, which change are we least likely to make to this card? If we weren't planning to change the color combination... Okay, so we still want it to be red-green. Which change are we least likely to make? Changing haste to double strike. I think that's a very fair thing. If you changed haste to double strike, it would pretty much have to become... Well, no, you could have double strike as a red ability. Change trample to it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. That's still a very red ability. Change from hexproof to this creature must be blocked this turn if able. That's a very red ability. Change sorcery to instant. Change +1/+1 to +2/+2. Okay. Changing it from a sorcery to an instant, I believe shifts it more to a blue ability, because now it's not just an offensive creature. Me stealing your creature can now be used as a defensive tool for myself. Everything else seems to very much fit into that red style. So I'm going to say changing it from a sorcery to an instant. Red and green are very much sorcery speed interactions with the board. And if we were to do this, it would throw that... If we were to change it from a sorcery to an instant, that would shift that balance, and all of a sudden you wouldn't be able to balance the red and green against everything else, because now you have incredibly fast and powerful removal like Lightning Bolt and Shock and Wizard's Lightning in red, and you're able to just steal people's things at cantrip speed. Which of these phrases is a follower of White's philosophy least likely to say? So this is more Magic philosophy. White being... Well, sometimes the individual suffers that the larger group can thrive. That seems very black. Evil must be preemptively stopped. Maybe. A system without structure is a system asking to fail. That's very blue. Nothing can go wrong if you act from your heart. Red. Violence is never preferred, but it is occasionally necessary. Ooh, least likely to say. Okay, this I could see them saying. This I could see them saying. This maybe... This I could see them saying. Violence is never preferred, but is occasionally necessary. I think it's that one. Okay, which of these phrases is a follower of Blue's philosophy least likely to say? Now, Blue is the very control-oriented aspect of Magic. They play a lot of things like counterspells, negate, mana leak, all these abilities that deny your opponent things, as well as being able to play things with flying, or just very powerful cantrips, things like Brainstorm or Ponder. Every person has the ability to become anything, is an incredibly Blue thing. A fear of change is dangerous, also incredibly Blue. Tools are an important part of any society. Still very Blue. You are shaped more by your genes than your experience. I don't think so. I believe this is the wrong answer. And by wrong, I mean right. We're not going to dwell on multiple choice questions. I've spent far too long in the school system trying to judge these things. So we're going to move on. Question 9. Which of these phrases is a follower of Black least likely to say? Only I choose what path I walk. That's the most Black thing I've ever heard. The difference between success and failure is a willingness to do what needs to be done. That's also a very Black philosophy. The weak serve a purpose. They are a resource of the I didn't create the system. Sometimes you have to put others ahead of yourself. There you go. The other 4, I feel like, are already flavor text on Black cards. That's how on point they are. And that last one just very stands out. Follower of Red. A life without passion is a life unlived. Mistakes should be avoided at all costs. No. Life is messy. The fewer rules, the better. Your greatest regrets about things you didn't do, not things you did. Ooh, those are words to live by right there. I'm gonna put that out there. Words to live by. Question number 11. Which of these phrases is a follower of Green's philosophy least likely to say? The key to happiness is accepting that the world is as it's meant to be. You are born into a role. Killing for sport is just a part of life. All life is interconnected. Adaptation is a slow process. I don't know much about Green, so I'm just going to kind of lean into this one and call it good. If you were to bring back the battle cry mechanic in a Ravnica set, which guild would be the best match for the mechanic? Now, we're going to go look up. This looks like we're getting more into like the nitty-gritty of mechanics, and I think that that's where we get into things that are more important to discuss on this podcast, because I want to talk about mechanical design a lot more. So we're going to actually go look up this mechanic, because I'm not familiar with it. Battle Cry, Magic, the Gathering. Now, this is a mechanic that says whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Okay. So this is an ability that makes things what's the word I want? It wants things to go all in. It wants things to go fast and slam hard and deal damage and just destroy things. So if we compare that to Rakdos is red and black, Boros being red and white, and it's one of these two because they're the ones that fit this idea the best. This mechanic incentivizes players to take everything in and turn their board sideways and just attack, to be very aggressive. And it rewards them by benefiting everything else in their board and giving them an advantage. But it doesn't leave much defensive options available. So I'm going to lean towards the red-black Rakdos as opposed to Boros, because this mechanic incentivizes players to act with a little bit more reckless abandon than I believe white predominantly embodies. Which effect is usually seen on instants more than sorceries? Definitely not land destruction. Direct damage, reanimation, land fetching, discard effects. Definitely direct damage. If we think, this is one of those, land is the most important resource in Magic. Maybe we could argue that life is the most important, but it's between life and land. And so being able to destroy your opponent's land as soon as they play it would have killed the game. And Magic players love to make fun of like, oh, is this going to kill Magic? No, that would have actually killed the game, because then people would be able to just stop you from ever being able to play. Direct damage There's some good sorcery speed, direct damage spells, I'm assuming. The good ones, though, are Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix, Boros Charm. Like, direct damage just goes with instants very well. It allows you to respond to your opponent's things, but it still allows your opponent to get things like enter the battlefield triggers, get tapping abilities happening, and it allows for a much more dynamic interaction because you're able to play things on your opponent's turn, whereas if you're just playing it on your turn, it's much more laid back. Everything else on this list, reanimation, land fetching, discard effects, they all have mechanics where you would have to do things on your turn. Otherwise, it's incredibly unbalanced and unfair to your opponent. Direct damage is really the only thing that promotes more interaction instead of stifling it. So direct damage is usually seen more on instants than sorceries. What is the biggest problem design-wise with this card? Here we go. 2 and a green for a sorcery that reads target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. At the beginning of your next upkeep, that creature gets +2/+2. At the beginning of your next upkeep after that, the creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So long-acting giant growth is what it's called. It's a very apt name. It's something that kind of ramps down. The spell should get bigger over time, not smaller, to build an excitement. I mean, that's fair, but also I don't really think that that's a fair design problem with the card. That's more of a flavor problem. And also, I think it gives you a major effect now, and a decreasing effect as you go. I don't think that's the problem. The spell is too cheap, and this would be the one where I might agree with this. It's a sorcery, so you can't use it as a combat trick. So the cost may be fairly positioned. So that's something to consider. The spell requires you to track things for 3 turns without any way to mark it. That's a very real complaint. And I think that is a very poor design-wise accomplishment. I think that this card right now would work perfectly as a saga. Minus the flavor element of sagas where they get bigger and more powerful over time, where it keeps track of how many things to do it. If I were to try to create this same effect, I would want to do it as an enchantment for 2 and a green that says place 3 counters on long-acting giant growth. At the beginning of your next upkeep, target creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on long-acting giant growth, then remove a counter from long-acting giant growth. If long-acting giant growth has no counters on it, sacrifice it. I think that would be a good way to track it and a good way to promote interaction with it, because as it is right now, you play it, and then for 3 turns, it's just an effect that happens that I can't deal with. The spell should let you target different creatures because the first one might die. I don't think that's a really design problem. I think that if you allowed it to just give something different each time, now we definitely cross into it should be an enchantment and not a sorcery. The spell should be instants that can work in combat. No. No. At that point, it is far too cheap, far too powerful. I mentioned it, as soon as we started talking about this, I mentioned that, if it were an instant, it would definitely be undercosted. So I believe it's either the spell is too cheap, or it requires you to track 3 turns without marking it. And I think that that's the biggest design problem, because the cost can be shifted. That's not really a thing that's a big issue. Design-wise, it will slow down play, and it will require players to figure out a way to track it. And they're gonna put this card in their discard pile, and then they're gonna put a dice on top of it that says 3 or 2 or 1, and they're basically going to be doing what I talked about implementing. So that's the biggest design problem with this dice, is it is an unintuitive way to keep track of something over a long period of time. If this card was a hybrid creature, what colors would it be? So 4 mana, star with a flash. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in your hand. So that's definitely going to be blue. Blue of some type. And everything on there is blue. Blue of some type. Because, oh wait, no, not black-red. It's not going to be black-red. Boom. We eliminated the thing. Look at us. We're so good at game design. We know what to do. Oh yeah. Now we have to decide what type of other color it will be. Something that wants to have lots of cards is not going to be red. So we can eliminate that. White, black, or green as the other colors. Let's think. Sip a little bit of water, because talking for a long period of time is hard, and so we need to make sure to keep the vocal cords free-flowing so we can continue talking. But I believe this will be white-blue. Well, either white-blue or green. Would it be? It'd be white-blue. This is not, I'm not quite sure exactly how to put my finger on why, other than it feels wrong having this be green and blue. Maybe just because I don't play any green, but that's what I feel. What is the most likely rarity for this card? Uncommon. Tarmogoyf is a rare. This has flash. It can be big. You can pump it with instants. I think it would be a rare. I'm going to change my answer. It's going to be a rare. What ability could be added to this creature without changing its colors? Use your answer from question 15. Okay, where we said it was white-blue. Card name's power and toughness are each equal. Card name must be blocked if able. More red than white, but okay, maybe. Whenever a card name deals damage to an opponent, draw a card. That is on flavor for this card. Now, that makes it more powerful. That builds more interaction because your opponent wants to deal with it. I think I would staple that on there right now because it's good. I think it's a good design. When it dies, put a 1/1 counter on card name. Or whenever a creature dies. That would make it very green. Can't be blocked by more than one creature. That's kind of whitey. At the end of your turn, untap it. I think, what ability could be added to this creature without changing its colors? Absolutely, whenever it deals damage to an opponent, draw a card. That is the number one thing that I think makes a blue card. Card advantage. It matches, it fits with the flavor of this card. It provides bonuses to it, and I think that would be an excellently designed card. A player finishes their first game of Magic. Which of the following do we care most about? So let's just, in general, if a player plays a game, what's the most important thing? That they had fun and they want to play again. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. If I look at a game like, let's pick Catan. Not my favorite game. Not a big fan of Catan. It's one of those games where it's really easy to teach people, and so if I'm going to like a party where I know there aren't a lot of people who play board games, I can bring Catan, pull it out and be like, hey, here's this gateway game that's incredibly easy to get into. But there's not a whole lot of depth to it for me. But you can pretty quickly see some of the good design elements. They have the snake draft in the beginning to choose where people play. They have the nice trading mechanics that get better as you move around. They've got multiple ways to get victory. These are all good things. But at the end of the day, if I were Klaus Tuber, I believe that's the guy who designed Catan. I think so, yeah. If I were him, if I were the designer of the game, and I had to choose between having my players look at a game and be like, there's a lot of design depth to this game. Or have them look at my game and say, that was fun, I want to play it again. 100% of the time, I'm going to want them to play it again. So if they see the depth of the game, if they understand the cards in their deck, if they have a favorite card, they have seen most of the card types and most of the evergreen words, if they understand everything with the game, like those are all great things, but it doesn't matter if they don't want to play again. And that's the entire purpose of game design, is making things that people want to play again. So that's definitely the answer to this, is that they want to play again. When designing a card for Spike, Spike is the player who wants to win. Just plain and simple. They're the player who plays to win. They're the people who go to tournaments and like learn all the rules, and they know that the battle cry rule is 702.90A, that say the triggered ability battle cry means whenever this happens, that happens. And then 702.90B, if a creature has multiple instances of battle cry, each trigger separately. I have that pulled up on my other monitor. I don't actually have that memorized. But that's the Spike player. They're the person who cares deeply about specific cards and the rules text about them and doing well. Which of the following is the most important? The card produces card advantage. Very good. That's a very competitive thing to want. The card tells Spike what the deck is about. Another thing, but if I see a nod to the bone deck in Pauper, that kind of tells me the deck's about life gain, but it doesn't really tell me anything about how it wins. It's kind of a weird deck. So I don't think that that's really what Spike cares about. Having a single card that tells you what your deck is about is much more a Timmy thing. And Timmy's the character who wants big things. They want the big dinosaurs. They want what's her name? 10 mana green. It decreases for everything. They want big dinosaurs. Boom. They don't care what it's called. They see a giant green dinosaur that gets cheaper when you play more stuff, and they're like, man, I want to slam that dinosaur on the table. Just boom. I want to play that. The other type of player is Johnny, and Johnny's the character who wants to be like, okay, I drew 1,000,000 cards, and now I play this thing, and I play this thing, and then I pick this up, and then I go ahead and play this, and I play that, and now I cast Grape Shot, and I deal 107 damage to you. And if it only works 1 out of every 10 games they play, they're happy, because they get to make this awesome combo, and they get to do this cool thing with their deck, where they like meld this puzzle together from all these cards. And that's what Johnny wants to do. Spike is the player who wants to win. A card lets Spike feel they outplayed their opponent, and I think that that's probably the most spiky thing that you can have, is you want to be better. You want to play better. The card has a low casting cost, and the card's very open-ended. So between it producing card advantage and letting them feel they outplayed their opponent, it's more important to create feelings in your opponents than like specific things. Like the card we were talking about earlier, this Mysterio, where I went on and on about, it lets you draw more cards, and then it's thematic, it fits the theme, it draws cards, it's producing all these things, it's good. I think it's more important to make them feel like they were able to play better than their opponent, because that's who Spike is. And so an important part of game design is being able to design things for all of those players, being able to design spiky cards, being able to design Johnny style interactions, being able to design mechanics for Timmy. You want to be able to have something for all of your players so that they always feel like there's something in your game for them. Let's see, what's a really good example of this? Seven Wonders. Seven Wonders is one of my favorite games of all time. It's a drafting game where you sit 7 people around a table and you build a civilization. And I love it because there's so many different things you can do. You can pursue a military victory, you can pursue a culture victory, you can pursue an economic victory, you can pursue a scientific victory, and they all fit in these different ways. And so as you're passing cards and you're drafting, there's the thing for the Timmy players where they get to say, ooh, this thing gives me 9 points. That's value. I get to play this one card and I get 9 points. That's cool. And then there's players like Johnny who they can draft like a trading post, which lets them get more value out of all their opponents. And then they get to do this cool thing where they because they built this wonder this turn, it lets them pick up a card from discard and play that, which let them get this thing for free, and they can do this cool thing sometimes. And they look for that, and so they look for the build tracks, where if you build this building in the first stage, you get a free building in the second age, and that's cool. And then there's the players who like to be really spiky in this game, where they see, okay, around the table, no one's drafting science. Okay, I'm going to draft science, because science is how I'm going to win this. So it's important that a good game have something for everybody. What were we talking about? We've gone off the rails already, and it's episode 1. We're only 20 questions into this 75-question quiz. Let's see, how am I doing on time? We're already 30 minutes into the episode. Welcome to Dice, Decks, and Design. Okay, design considers a card too slow for tournament play. What does that mean? So we're looking more at the spiky players. The people who go to tournaments. What was the big, Eggs. Eggs was a deck that was too slow for tournament play. It was a deck that required you to do so much stuff that even if you were playing pretty quickly, you could eat 20 minutes up in a single turn. Just fetching cards, shuffling your library, having your opponent cut it, sacrificing cards, moving them around through zones, thinking, figuring out what you have to go get, doing all this stuff, so that way your opponent really doesn't have any time to win. This is what that Gnaw to the Bone Pauper deck does. It tries to win game 1 by generating a lot of mana, by discarding creatures, by cycling them, and then beating you game 1 and then drawing game 2 at time. That's what it tries to do. So that's a card that's too slow for tournament play. It slows down the tournament. So what does that mean? Option A. The opponent will call the judge too often with a request of slow play. That's a very legitimate concern. The idea that your turns take so long that your opponent doesn't get to play Magic or play your game. That's a very not good feeling for that player. They kind of just get to sit there and watch their opponent have all the fun playing while they don't get to do anything. The card will make too many matches run over time in tournaments. That's the biggest thing. That's what we always talk about when we talk about Lantern Control, which is another deck archetype in Magic, where with Lantern, an opponent can spend all day playing. They can play their 50-minute match, they can play their 5 extra turns, and the game can still be a draw. And that's very frustrating at a high level where you need a winner. So that is the other kind of part of the too slow for tournament play. The card will make games take more than 15 turns. Now, this is absolutely not what this means. 15 turns with 2 red decks against each other could still only be about 5 minutes. 15 turns with 2 Gnaw to the Bone decks is absolutely too long. That would be like several hours. So judging things off of turn times is not a good way to judge speed of a game. The player with this card will monopolize too much of the play time. Again, we could look at a deck like Lantern, where the Lantern player spends more time with priority than any other player, but that's because they have more things to consider and they're playing a much harder matchup. And I don't think that that's what they mean by too slow for tournament play. The card will cause problems for coverage. It will require too much commentary devoted to it. This is absolutely an aspect you have to consider for Magic, but for most games, considering what happens when really high-level players play your game in front of other people and someone's talking about it isn't really a concern most of the time. For very few people. If we expand it to talk about video games as well, you can talk about Dota, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Overwatch, kind of the big games, StarCraft 2, but none of that is too slow for tournament play. It's a little too complex for television, is the way I'd put that. So I believe that if you make too many matches run over time, that's your big problem. If you're slowing down games to the point where they are drawing out matches and it just has to happen that way because that's how you win, that's the problem with making something too slow for tournament play. That's why they banned the Eggs deck before I even started playing. That's why people talk about banning Lantern. Also, Magic players just hate when things are good. That's a little dig. Doesn't matter. Okay, we're working on the next Commander decks. Ooh. Which is the most important goal? I'm going to say right now, fun. Fun is always my number one goal. It's a very cop-out answer. But let's keep looking at this. Which is the most important goal? The decks are based on popular commander decks. I'd say no. I think when you're in a position where you get to create a product, you could absolutely make it where you try to make something that's popular more popular. But if something's already popular, it's because people like it, and they're not really just going to be like, oh, you made something that's similar to my thing, I'm going to buy that and play it. No. Each deck having a brand new theme is way more interesting, because if you're a player who has always played a combo deck, now all of a sudden, hey, I want to play something else. You can do that. So I think making a brand new theme is more important. The commanders inspire people to build new decks. This kind of follows in that new theme idea, where you're making players want to do more stuff with your game. You're wanting them to play more, spend more time thinking about your game, spend more time developing strategies for your game. That's what you want to do as a designer. You want to make something that isn't just a game, it's more of a lifestyle, as cop-out of an answer and phrasing as that sounds. You want to make something that people are interested in. The colors are equally represented. I mean, that's important. It's important to have balance and have something for everybody, but ultimately, I believe the most important thing is to inspire players. So we'll choose that. Which of the following creatures is the weakest in a typical standard legal draft format? Okay, so we're talking about green. And green likes big, green, dumb things. Like, just big. The weakest one here. So, we have 9 in a green, 10 mana for a 10-10, 6 mana for a 6-6, 4 mana for a 4-4, 8 mana for an 8-8, or 2 mana for a 2-2. This is a hard question, and I'm not quite sure what the answer is. I'll be completely honest with you. I would lean towards the higher costed things because it's incredibly difficult to get to 10 mana in any format. Except maybe Modern if you're playing Tron, but no one likes Tron. It's one of those things where, having spent so much time, you're already 10 turns into the game at the bare minimum. And if you're at that much of a board stall where you haven't done anything and you draw off the top of your deck at 10 mana, 10-10, I'm going to like that. I'm going to like it. It's going to be powerful-ish. And I'm going to say powerful-ish because I can play that. And it's gonna force something to happen. Either my opponent has to have an answer, and then he wins the game, because at that point I'm out of gas. I have nothing left. Or my opponent doesn't have anything, and I'm gonna be able to finally break this board stall that we're in. I'm gonna break the stalemate, and I'm gonna win the game. It's really expensive though. Which is weakest? We could also talk about the 4 mana 4/4, because at that point in the game, we're kind of in the middle of the game where you want all your cards to do a little bit more than just be a 4/4. I'm going to go towards the 10-10 because it's so expensive. It's very rarely going to see play. And I think being able to actually get your threats on the battlefield is important. Which of the following creatures is the strongest? Ooh, strong man. Well, if we say strongest as in the most power and toughness. Well, we know that's not what they mean. If we talk about the other end now, the 2 mana 2/2, that's like, it's fine. There's nothing like great about it in my mind. If I have 2 lands on the battlefield and I draw a 2 mana 2/2 and I don't have anything else to do, like, yeah, I'm going to put that out there. It's like, it's not bad. But also, you have like 1 mana 2/2s in the past. What's the Hound of Isamaru, whatever it is? It's a white mana for a 2/2 just puppy. Like, it's fine. There's the thing with all these cards is they're just fine. And I don't know how to evaluate which one's the weakest or strongest. 6 mana 6/6 is pretty solid. That's getting to the point of the game where you're okay just getting a big dude down. I'm going to go with that. We're going to go with the 6 mana 6/6. The lead of a set has removed a black instant removal spell from their set and asks you to create potential replacement designs. Which of these qualities is most important for your design? Okay. So we're designing a set of cards, and someone removes a black instant speed removal spell. So something that I can just play on my opponent's turn and say, nope, that's gone. I'm done with it. Get it out of here. Allow me to drink water. Water. It's delicious. Which is most important? The most important thing. If we remove a black spell, I would lean towards we want it to fill the same role or the same color. So either that it's a removal card or a black card. I would love to know why they removed it. If they removed it because the set had so much removal already, well then no, we don't want to have removal. Like, we don't want to make a removal card. We'll probably make like a creature. So that way we balance it out. Now you have removal and you have creatures. You have removal and things to remove. Or we make something that kind of plays counter to that, where we make, oh, you have removal, well, I have life gain. That's not a big, like, it's an asynchronous design, but it kind of, we both get value. If we want to maintain that color balance, which I think is the most important part, that maintain that balance around the color pie, making sure that every player has something that they want to play, because every player has colors they like more than others. I like red more than anything else, and I don't play any green because green is boring, honestly. That's what I think. Green has a lot of big things. Meh. Whatever. I've got a 1 mana 1/2 that gets bigger if I discard cards. That's cool. So I think it's important to keep that balance of colors. Balance the colors, make sure that everybody has something to do. So we're going to maintain that it should be a black card. Why do green's common creatures tend to be a bit more efficient than white creatures? Whew, I bet it would really be helpful if I played green more now. So, green players love powerful creatures. White has stronger removal. This is the way it has always been and always will be, and we must never change it. Amen. White is the enemy of black and red. Green is the enemy of blue and black. Why do green's common creatures tend to be a bit more efficient than white creatures? Bit more efficient. Well, green is the enemy of blue and black. Both things with a lot of heavy removal. Whereas white being the enemy of black and red, also lots of efficient removal. Green being counter to blue, blue has a lot of efficiency in its color. So I think that could be kind of what we could lean on, is that we need to make sure that there's that balance of efficiency across the color pie. Also, green has terrible removal. So white definitely has stronger removal than green. And I think that may be why. Because white is able to balance out its less efficient creatures by being able to proactively deal with their opponent's creatures more, green has to have more efficient creatures because their removal is basically non-existent. Yeah, that's a fair way to put that, I believe. Fair way. Fair. It's fair. Which color gets the second fewest common creatures in a typical set? Common creatures in a typical set. Let's think. This is one of those things where I just have not played Magic for long enough to know, just off the top of my head. Let's think about it. Green usually gets a lot of creatures and not a whole lot of anything else. So it's definitely not green. Second fewest. Man, not even like the least. The second least. White, also very heavily creature focused. Red is where we could say, okay, red is definitely in like the lower half. So either like third, fourth, or fifth. Same with blue and black. I'm leaning towards blue being the least, because they have a lot more cantrips. They have a lot more spells. And that puts either black or red as the second fewest common creatures. Black has a lot more rare and uncommon creatures. And so I think black has less common creatures than red does. If that makes sense. Yes. Which of these green keywords does design have to be the most careful when using? Storm. Yes. Storm. A bit of background for those who don't play Magic. Storm is an ability that says... Oh, also, Mad Olaf, green is not the best. Green is definitely not the best. And no, I did not take the test when it came out. I was too young, unfortunately. Oh well. However, which design do we have to be the most careful when using? Reach, Hexproof, Trample, Vigilance, or Death Touch? Reach is a very green ability. It allows you to deal with flyers. They put it... Oops, let me silence my phone. That should not be going off right now. Whoop, there we go. Hexproof, very green and blue. There's a whole deck in Modern based around boggles. And boggles are one of those things where, you know, they're annoying. And so you have to be very careful because there's no way to interact with something that's hexproof. Once it hits the battlefield, it's kind of just there unless you can get a creature in front of it. Trample is just fun. It allows you to do extra damage all the way through to your opponent or their planeswalkers. Vigilance allows things to block and attack. Death Touch lets you just kill big things with small things. And so you have to be careful with all of these because they all represent something more than just a basic design. But hexproof is the most important to be careful with. If you don't balance around hexproof, if I can get a massive creature with hexproof onto the battlefield, you have no way of dealing with it. There's just none. Other than Death Touch. That's like the one thing. So hexproof is very important to be very careful when you use, because otherwise there's no real way to deal with it. You can't hit it with removal. Other than something like an Oblivion Stone or a Nevin Neural's Disc, things that are massive board wipes that don't happen a lot in Standard and are already going to be incredibly powerful. Hexproof is the most important to watch out for. We try to avoid making two-color cards where the card should be done as a monocolored card in one of the two colors. Given that, suppose you have a two-color 4/4 creature with flying and vigilance and no other abilities. Which of the following color combinations would be the best choice for this card? Now, I happen to know this answer because people were very upset about it. And the most important part of this question is the first line. We try to avoid making two-color cards where the card could be done as a monocolored card. So, a 4/4 with flying and vigilance. Immediately, everyone thought white and blue. You make a white-blue. But flying and vigilance are both things that you can put in white alone or blue alone. So, with white, you have things like Sarah Angel where they have flying. And blue definitely has vigilance. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but there are blue creatures where vigilance could work. What are the opposites of white and blue? And that's where we have black, red, and green. Or just not white and blue, is black, red, and green. So those are the three things that you can look at and say, what could we do for this? Between black, red, and green as our combinations. Black and green is the only thing on here that doesn't have white or blue as an option. And so we can look at that because vigilance and flying are both things you can kind of put in red, kinda. I'm trying to think of examples off the top of my head. I don't really have any. But red, it's got that kind of flavor to it, of very passionate. So you could have like knights and angels and like spirits type thing, like something like Hellspark Elemental, where it's something that it's very powerful, just kind of hits hard and then disappears. Things like that, where Flying and Vigilance they could still fit that flavor. Black, you can definitely get that kind of flying idea, and Vigilance, but I think black and green is the most important. I'm already getting away from what my point was here. I'm not sure what it was. We're going to move on to question 29. Which of these is the most important quality for a set to have? It's easy to learn, it has strategic depth, it has powerful cards, it's fun to play, and it matches the story. I'm going to say it's fun to play. I think having something, but also being easy to learn is incredibly important. If you have something that's easy to learn, you're going to be able to get new players to play it. If you have a deck of cards that makes a game, and it's easy to teach. Let's take War, for example. War is an incredibly easy game to teach someone. We split a deck in half. Whoever has the higher card wins. There's not a whole lot of fun to that, though. So it's really hard to go into like a restaurant and say, hey, does anyone want to play War? Because it's boring. There's not a lot to it. So if something is easy to learn, you can get new people to play it, but no one really sticks around for long. This is kind of a good example would be No Man's Sky. Incredibly simple game. Everyone hopped onto it, and a lot of that was like media hype and stuff like that. But it was incredibly easy to teach. You're basically just kind of exploring a universe. And that's fine. Cool idea. The problem with that game was that it wasn't fun. And people stopped playing it because of that. It was not fun to play for hours on end. So, I think it's the most important quality for anything is that it's fun to play. Which of these creature, and this we'll make this our last question for today, I believe. We've been going for about 52 minutes. This is going to make a good first episode. Question number 30. Which of these creature keywords tends to have the most value in a control deck? Ooh, control. Control is the idea that I am going to sit on the back foot. I'm going to be more reactive. I'm not going to be the one putting up all the threats. I'm going to be the one dealing with all the threats. So that's an important thing to be able to do. On the other hand is the aggressive decks, and those are the cards that say I'm going to be stepping out, I'm going to be putting my foot forward, I'm going to be the one trying to take control of this game, I'm going to be trying to do it quickly, and control is the one that's saying, okay, I'm going to try to stop you, I'm going to try to hold you down, I'm going to try to control everything. It's very descriptive. These are good names. But which of these keywords tends to have the most value in a control deck? Menace, Trample, Haste, First Strike, or Lifelink? Immediately, we can throw out Haste and Menace. These are very, very aggressive keywords. Menace requires your opponent to have multiple things to block it. It's something that deals with combat. Haste deals with you can attack immediately as soon as you play it. It's very much about putting threats forward, and that's about being the aggressive deck. So those two we can immediately eliminate because they are not the most important part of a control deck. This leaves us with Trample, First Strike, and Lifelink. First Strike also deals with doing combat damage. It deals with being able to still just make your threats more efficient than your opponent's threats, which is more control-oriented than Haste and Menace, but still ultimately, I think, more of a mid-range or tempo-style mechanic, leaving Trample and Lifelink. Trample, again, is a value engine. Similar to First Strike, it's trying to get more value out of combat than your opponent is getting out of combat. So by being able to trample in, you're doing more damage to your opponent or you're doing damage to your opponent in addition to your creatures. You're getting more value out of combat than your opponent is. And that's a very tempo-oriented play. So ultimately, I think it comes down to lifelink, because lifelink is the keyword on this list that provides you benefits that don't immediately impact your opponent. It gives you more time by giving you more life. It allows you to just hang on longer to deal with your threats, or to deal with their threats and take control of the game. So I think lifelink is the most valuable in this control deck. So this has been our first episode of Dice, Decks, and Design, a series where we talk about board game design, video game design, and everything in between. I'm your host. Ooh, I just smacked my mic. I'm sorry if that blew out your eardrums. I'm your host, Jacob. You can find me on Twitter at @the_only_Jacob. Make sure to check out The Fabric of Reality on twitch.tv, twitch.tv/The Fabric of Reality, where I stream this live every Sunday, every Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That is 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 6:30 if you're on the Pacific Coast. Also, make sure to check out the Fabric of Reality YouTube channel, where these uploads will be going in the future. Not currently set up at the moment. It's coming together. Give me some time. Sorry. First episode. Tweet me any questions you have, anything you want me to talk about on the next episode. We're going to keep working our way through this questionnaire. I'm going to try to pick up the speed a bit next time so we can try to finish it. There's 75 total questions. We're 30 in, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Goodbye.